warship Celestial Dawn drifted in silence, its hull still scarred from battles the galaxy wished to forget. Inside, among soldiers bred for survival and aliens taught to fear humanity, one woman knelt before a trembling predator cub. Captain Mira Lorne didn't see a threat. She saw hunger. She saw loneliness. She saw herself. The crew watched, breath held as the human removed her gloves and touched the creature's quivering muzzle. "It's all right," she whispered. "You don't have to fight anymore." And in that fragile heartbeat, a predator bowed its head to a human. A fleet learned what true strength looked like. Empathy had just outranked every weapon on board. The hum of the Solace Dawn was soft, a heartbeat beneath the silence of deep space. The stars hung motionless beyond the viewport, their light dimmed by the ghostly shimmer of a nebula still bleeding from the death of a nearby sun. Captain Mira Lorne stood alone on the observation deck, her reflection framed by swirling clouds of violet dust. To anyone else it would have been beautiful. To her it was a wound in the sky, one that still burned. The Dravkar ship had died out there. It had burned bright and fierce before the Nova consumed it, a vessel of predators and soldiers who had once hunted humanity across half a dozen systems. And yet, when her sensors caught a single cry for help, she didn't hesitate. Her crew didn't understand. Maybe she didn't either. But compassion wasn't about understanding. It was about choice. They brought the survivor aboard barely alive, a towering figure of scaled obsidian flesh and silver eyes that burned with feral clarity. Tuvok, the warlord of the Seventh Claw, the devourer of suns, a name whispered in fear on every human ship that had ever run from his shadow. And now he lay restrained in Mira's medbay, surrounded by the hum of life support systems, breathing through the mask of his enemies. When he first woke, his instincts ruled him. The monitors spiked as his claws tore through the restraints, his bared fangs glinting under sterile light. But Mira didn't flinch. She didn't draw her weapon. She simply stood there, calm, quiet, her voice steady like the rhythm of the ship. "You're safe," she said softly. "No one will harm you here." He didn't understand the words at first, but he understood tone. No creature in the galaxy spoke to a Dravkar that way. Not with fear, not with anger. Only stillness, only warmth. For days, he refused food. He growled when the med drones approached. But she visited anyway. Every morning and every evening, she sat near the glass barrier of his containment cell, reading softly from her datapad. Sometimes she spoke of human history, of oceans and birds and the way rain smelled on soil. Sometimes she said nothing at all, just breathing in the same quiet space he did. And slowly, the beast inside him began to listen. One night, when the artificial dusk cycle dimmed the ship's lights, Mira noticed movement. Tuvok was watching her, truly watching, not as a predator assesses prey, but as something lost studies a map. His voice came rough and low, filtered through the translator. "Why?" She looked up from her reading. "Why what?" He hesitated, the muscles in his jaw twitching. "You save your enemy. You feed me. You speak peace to one who butchered your kind. Why?" Her answer was quiet. "Because someone has to stop the cycle." He stared at her for a long time, and for the first time since he'd been brought aboard, his claws retracted. Days became weeks. The wound in his side healed. The wound in his soul did not. He began to ask questions about humanity, about her. She told him of Earth, of sunlight filtered through leaves, of a sky not scarred by warships. He told her of Dravkar tradition, how strength was measured in blood, how weakness meant death, how the idea of mercy was seen as madness. "Then why are you alive?" She asked him once. He didn't answer. But later, when she left the medbay, he found himself staring at the handprint she'd left on the glass, small, fragile, and somehow unbreakable. When the Solace Dawn intercepted a distress beacon 3 sectors later, everything changed. The coordinates pointed to a human colony under siege by rogue Dravkar, deserters from his own fleet. Mira didn't hesitate to alter course. Tuvok warned her not to go. "They will kill you. They do not understand compassion." "Then maybe they'll learn," she said simply. He saw in her eyes the same impossible defiance that had once made him fear humans, not their weapons, but their will to hope. And for the first time in his life, he feared something else entirely, losing her. When the colony came into view, it was already burning. The Solace Dawn dropped into orbit, broadcasting peace signals. The rogue ships ignored them. Plasma fire streaked across the sky. Mira ordered her crew to evacuate the civilians. But when enemy boarding parties breached the hull, she didn't run. She grabbed her medkit, sealed the doors, and went straight toward the conflict, straight toward Tuvok's cell. He was waiting. "You should have fled," he growled. "I don't run," she said, unlocking the cell. "And you trust me?" "I choose to." That single sentence broke something in him. When the first explosion rocked the deck, he didn't hesitate. Tuvok moved like a storm, shielding her from falling debris, cutting down the intruders with precision and fury. But when the last of them fell and the alarm screamed through the corridors, he knew what he had to do. The reactor was failing. The only way to save the ship, and Mira's crew, was manual override. From inside the core chamber, it would vaporize him. He didn't tell her. He only turned to her once, his silver eyes steady. "Your species," he said softly. "You confuse the galaxy." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Tuvok, please." But he smiled, the smallest, most human expression she had ever seen on a Dravkar's face. "You taught me mercy. Let me return it." Before she could stop him, the doors sealed. Through the glass, she watched as he placed his clawed hand against the control interface. The radiation alarm screamed, but his gaze never left hers. The light engulfed everything. Silence followed. When the Solace Dawn stabilized, Mira walked the empty corridor to the reactor wing. The containment doors were fused shut, but in the glow of the emergency lights, she could still see it, a single handprint burned into the glass. Weeks later, when the colony rebuilt and peace talks resumed, alien envoys asked her how the great devourer of suns had died. She only said, "He remembered how to live." And somewhere, out among the drifting stars, she liked to imagine a soul once made for conquest finally at peace, wrapped not in blood or fury, but in something infinitely stronger.